Hello and welcome, independent researchers, skeptics, and all of humankind, to Shadow Citizen.
Welcome to episode 13 with guest Stefan Verstappen. You can listen to our live broadcasts and chat along at mixlr.com/Shadow Citizen. We are also simulcast at radioconfluence.com, and from there you can take us with you on TuneIn and Xeno Live. For a schedule of upcoming guests and past archives, please check out our shadowcitizen.online. And now we have some cool merchandise now, so people are enjoying those coffee cups and T-shirts and that, helping us get our name out there. My name is Rob Ossell, and my co-host is
Rachael L. McIntosh. And today we have Stefan Verstappen, and he is a Canadian writer and author of 8 books, including The 36 Strategies of Ancient China, Blind Zen, The Art of Urban Survival. His most recent release is The Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior. We wanted to have him on because not only is he psychologically a very good person to get your head around and communicate with him and try to think like him and get yourself into that mindset. He's very aware of what's going on in the world, and that was what we liked about him the most. So we wanted to introduce you to him. Stefan, you want to say hi to our audience?
Hello.
Hi. Now, I was intrigued first off with you back in the day, a long time ago. I was at the Daily Paul. I was a delegate for Ron Paul, and I was hanging out at a website called the Daily Paul, and people were posting your videos, your YouTube videos. And when I was recently on a talk show, an internet talk show, talking about my books, the host said, you and Stefan would get along really well. And he instantly put us together. And I didn't know who you were at first. And then when I saw the videos, I said, oh, I know exactly who this guy is. And then you sent me over The Art of Urban Survival. And I was like, oh, wow, we got a prepper. This is cool. And then I looked at The Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior. I was like, wow, this guy's got a lot going on. So where do you want to start, Stefan?
Well, we talked about this, Rachel. I follow your lead. You're in charge.
Lead? Okay. Well, I think it would be good if we start talking about how you were a youth counselor with the kids in Toronto. Let's let people know that. Are you still in Toronto?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, okay. So you're still there, and you were dealing with the kids. And I noticed you have a book. It looks like some sort of urban, I don't know if it's urban, but a survival guide for kids too. So would you talk to me a little bit about that whole scenario, the whole time you were working with the kids and how it kind of went into this urban survival thing?
Sure. Well, it's a long story, and I don't really think it's that interesting. But in a nutshell, I grew up in what is now the most notorious neighborhood in Toronto, the Jane Finch Corridor. And but when I grew up there, it was my life was like Huckleberry Finn. It was a very distant suburb. The streets weren't even paved at that time, and we had nothing but farm fields and horse ranches and creeks and ponds, and we built rafts, and it was a wonderful existence. And then they built the first housing project, and it started the downfall. And so I grew up.
What year was that? That sounds It sounds fabulous. What year was that?
Well, it was probably, let me guess.
In the year of our Lord, yeah.
What year? 1443.
Yeah.
No, it goes back to this would be the early the 60s, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have been 13 in 1970, so this would be the 60s. And the amazing thing was, we also have a thing here called Black Creek Pioneer Village, which is a recreation of a 17th, 18th century pioneer settlement, with authentic buildings. And it is in this valley by the creek. And so when we were kids, we would go through this forest, and it was, of course, the haunted forest, and we came out of it, and then there was this pioneer village. There were no gates. This is in the days when nobody locked their doors. There were no gates. There were ticket takers. Everybody, was on the honor system, and so we were just, snot-nosed kids, 7, 8-year-old. And so we got to literally live like Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, in that era, surrounded by those old farms and that. Anyways, it quickly deteriorated when the government decided to improve things, as it always goes. And it soon became a notorious high-density housing projects. They built, all these skyscrapers. And anyways, so I'm an OG, original gangster, the Driftwood gangster. We call ourselves the Dogs, Driftwood OGs, And one day we were visiting the recreation center, and this wonderful woman, Lenore Suddes, she had gotten a grant and to do youth work and community service. You know what Obama claims to do, community organizing. This is what she did. And she hired me and my partner and my buddy, my best friend. And they called us Starsky and Hutch because we looked like Starsky and Hutch. And so it was a very great experience. We got training. She had faith in us. We got enough money to live. And we created so many projects. We had after-school programs, athletic programs. We had a daycare center. We had a coffee house with live music. And we took, inner city youth out to the farms on the weekends and taught them how to drive tractors and all that kind of good stuff, to the point where the Prime Minister, Pierre Trudeau, was going to come by and visit us. And that's when they shut us down. And that's when I learned the first lesson about government, and that is they don't ever do anything. And if anybody else actually does something positive, they will shut you down.
Interesting. Yeah.
No, but that's the way it is. That's what government is. There is nothing they can't screw up. The minute the government gets involved in any activity, no matter what it is, retirement or pension plan or war on drugs or ending poverty or welfare, anything, they always make it worse. And if anybody is able to do a good job, they go after them because it makes them look bad. So that was my first experience. But and then shortly after that, I went to work for Toronto Boys Home, which was a halfway home for youth that had been in trouble with the law, and instead of sending them to juvie, they put them in a halfway house. And I worked for them for a summer, taking these troubled teenager boys up into the woods of northern Ontario, and I would spend a week with each group, teaching them how to canoe and how to build fires and camp and portage and hike, and so that was a great experience. But what I've seen, the lesson I learned from that, I guess, is that individuals and small groups of people can accomplish a lot. Working together, working within a community, really does a lot and can accomplish a lot. And the other thing is that, working with troubled youth and high crime neighborhoods, I mean, you got to get them out of the city and into the woods and teach them some real skills. And that will improve their lives, which it improved my life because I was the graduate of a 3-year Outward Bound program where they taught us everything, canoeing, hiking, how to shoot a gun, how to shoot a bow, how to rappel off of a cliff. I mean, we did everything, rope courses, canoe over canoe rescue. I mean, it was wonderful. You come out of that with such confidence in yourself that lasts for the rest of your life, as opposed to the false confidence our current system of education and society inflicts on children, where everybody gets a medal, a participation trophy. Nobody's a winner. Nobody's a loser. Nobody has to try. Nobody has to fail. What you create with that is a bunch of mediocre people that know deep down inside they're nothing. They know that there's no confidence there. You only build confidence through struggle and effort and success in overcoming your fears, And so, of course, they discontinued the Outward Bound program.
Once again, the government. So who shut that down?
The government.
Government? Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. Now, of course, you're in Canada. We're in the United States. Do you see parallels? I mean, obviously, your type of government is very similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. Do you vote or
Me?
not?
No,
Yeah,
no,
personally. No, you don't. Hmm.
no. I won't participate in that farce.
Yeah.
No, I've heard the arguments. Yeah, but if you don't vote, and then a third party candidate could, blah blah blah. No, it doesn't matter because the whole voting system, the whole election process, is a big dog and pony show. It's a con. It's a public theater because it doesn't matter what you vote or who you vote or where you vote or how many times the same agenda is being followed all the time. So also, I lived in the United States for many years. I've spent 12 years in California. I've traveled all through the United States several times. And yes, we have a slightly different government system, parliamentary and instead of the congressional there. But it doesn't matter because the powers that be, whoever they are, these evil cabal of psychopathic, bloodthirsty, child molesting cannibals, and that's exactly what they are, the ones that rule this world have the same agenda in the United States. It's the same agenda in Canada, the same agenda in England, in Germany, in Sweden, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Italy, in France. I mean, they all follow the same agenda. All our countries are infected with political correctness. They're all suffering the cancer of feminism. They're all being invaded by millions of third world criminal refugees. And there's nothing, the Australians didn't vote for this. The French didn't vote for that. The Dutch didn't vote for that. Canada didn't vote for that. They all had different political parties, all different political candidates, all different political systems, and yet we're all getting the same stuff. They all have a central bank. They're all in debt up to their eyeballs. They all have the same, cultural Marxist indoctrination. They all have the same school and educational indoctrination system. There's no difference. So
Remember I think it was what was it during? I think it was during, oh gosh, I can't remember what the actual incident was. I think it was during the collapse of 2008, our financial collapse, the real estate bubble. They had an announcement that was said in France, in Germany, in the United States, everybody, and they said the exact same. It was like they were reading the same exact press release.
They are. They all read the same press release. There was, at the time, we had our prime minister was Stephen Harper, and he read this speech. And turned out that 2 days earlier, the Prime Minister of Australia, I forget what the name of that.
Yeah, we might be talking about the same exact thing. Yeah, because I remember seeing it was the exact same speech.
It was the exact same speech. So everybody's on the same agenda. They get their talking points, so it doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't. They all get the same talking points. So the same thing with Trump, yeah, okay, maybe Trump is. No, he's not.
Yeah.
There's no way this guy would be president if he wasn't on the list of people that take orders.
Right.
Rob,
how do you feel about that?
Yeah, we've got a question from the chat room, and that is, what is your alternative to a voting system? If you're not into voting, what would you? And I could go off on that too, but I'll let you take it for a while.
Yeah, it's I've thought long and hard about this because I've been trying to figure this out, come up with solutions. And the only solution is a revolution, but it has to be in a leaderless revolution. There's no other way to do it. Frankly, folks, it's too late. The horses fled the barn. It's too late to close the barn door after the horse is gone. We are screwed. We do not have any say in how our government and how our lives are run. We have zero say in that. And there is no solution that's going to work under the current system. I mean, what could you do? An alternative party? That's not going to work. They'll either infiltrate it and subvert it, or they'll marginalize you, or if worse comes to worse, they just round you all up and put you in prison as, under phony terrorist charge, whatever they want. We don't have a chance in this system against the system. There's no way you can fix it from inside. We can't create another party. We can't change the laws. So a leaderless revolution, and the reason I say leaderless is because the minute we put together a movement,
Yep.
whether it's like
It gets
zeitgeist or
co-opted,
something,
yeah.
yeah, no, and then you have a hierarchy, and then you need
Mm-hmm.
funding, and then and then the infiltrators come in, and it's the easiest thing in the world to turn people against each other, and this is our great weakness. It's very hard for us to unite in a common cause, and it's almost nothing to sow discord and discontent among a group of people. So any kind of movement is going to fail.
Yep.
So the only thing we can do is individually, en masse, is subvert the system. What I mean is, we need
Just
to
withdraw from the system. Yeah, I'm kind of going to back up here just a little bit, because you talked about how anytime the people do something, the government gets jealous and they go in and screw it up. And I remember one time there was the Midwest was having a bumper crop of everything, and down south they were having a drought, and they're saying, well, geez, too bad. The farmers said, well, if the government will transport the grain down there, or the hay or whatever, we're willing to donate our excess. And the government, logistically we can't do that. The independent truckers stepped in and said, well, if they're willing to donate the hay, we'll donate we'll transport it to them. And then it was after that, when the independents were going to do it, then the government stepped in and goes, oh, well, we've got all these military vehicles hanging around that, I think we could do it maybe. But kind of more to, back, you were talking about how this project sprung up out of nowhere. And I'm kind of dealing with the same thing here. We've got these projects, they bring in people from other areas for racial diversity. But it also brings in the crime. It brings in everything else that comes along with it. People that are that have everything handed to them, they're not satisfied and they expect more. But if humanity is confronted with some sort of a tragedy, they always pull together. Whenever there's a flood or any kind of storm or anything, people always get together and figure out how to clean the mess up. But it's not by the government. It's the people just roll up their sleeves and work together. Yeah.
And like I said, I saw that in action, doing the community work, and everybody that Lenore hired was working class, right? There was no college graduates with a degree in sociology and things like that, And they were able to do a better job than all the college graduates, all the doctorates that were actually working in the area. We had several groups that were trying to. Supposedly, they had something to do with working against the high youth crime rate and the lack of alternative activities for disaffected youth and things like that. None of them did anything. They had bigger budgets. They had lots of people with all kinds of degrees, and they didn't do anything. It was working class people working together, and so small groups. And I'm coming up with a plan for this. So I'm working on a book called The Community Survival Plan, where I try to show that really the only way we're going to get out of this is we form small communities ourselves. We look after each other. We have each other's backs, and we need that right now because, we talked a little bit earlier off air, but what people don't understand is that we are in the Great Depression right now. I can tell you the difference from when I was a teenager to now. We are in the Great Depression. Everybody it's just about money and the homelessness and the hunger and, but we've forgotten how to cooperate as small communities to support each other. So the alternative to this megalomaniac, massive hierarchical government state monstrous 1,000-pound tumor on the back of humanity is small groups of people working together. No more than, say, 25 people, because after that the group becomes too big and you start to get into the radar of the powers that be. And right. Also, your successes, you keep them to yourselves. You do things to support each other. And so the leaderless revolution would be small communities, individual groups of people that we can all agree on starving the beast. Everybody, turn off your TV. Cancel your cable subscription. Don't go to see the Hollywood movies. Don't buy coffee at Starbucks. Don't shop at Walmart. Let's all agree we got to starve these SOBs, and stop feeding them. That's the first step. Then we create our own microeconomies. We have to look after each other. With right now, it's probably with a little bit of rent money now and then, or some cans of food for the kids. But soon it's going to be, we need to look after each other with food and medicines. And small communities can do that. We were 6 people, and like within 6 months, we had accomplished so much that the prime minister of the country wanted to cash in on our success, because it was election year and he was campaigning in our province. And this was such a wonderful program and showed how much we accomplished with so little government funding. I mean, we had I think our grant was $30,000, for a year for 6 people.
I've got a clip here from Catherine Austin Fitz, and it talks about, because we've got some chat in the room, talking about, government as opposed to government. And I'm asked to ask about counter economics, but I want to play this quick because this is what Catherine said we're looking at if things continue on the way they are.
So the big picture, here's our problem. We got a group of I'll call them the grumpy old men. Mm-hmm. So you've got George Shultz, you've got Henry Kissinger, you've got all these people who've maintained all these secrets for their entire life, and they don't want us to know the truth. And so what's their plan? Well, their plan is to double down on Orwell. So everybody should be chipped and they should have their money, digital. And if they don't behave, we turn off their money. So, so they're into mind control slavery to just deal with the situation, because they find the management of these multiple personality disorder universes very difficult to deal with, and they're afraid they can't keep a lid on it anymore.
So I know another one of the things that you touch on quite a bit is the psychopathy, and these are the people, they don't really have a conscience, they don't have any empathy, but they just love to control other people. And, if we don't, I think this is where Rachel and I both were drawn to Ron Paul. He was back to, just follow the Constitution, get back to states' rights, do stuff at the local level, and that's what so many people are looking at is just, throw away your TV, stay out of Walmart, grow your own food, help your neighbors. All that stuff is good stuff.
That's the only thing that's worked, and it's worked in the past. In the book that I'm working on, I give some references to the old friendship societies. I'm sure for those who are old enough to have watched the Flintstones, you remember they used to go to the Moose Lodge, and or was it the Water Buffalo Lodge? I forget what it was, but there were these lodge systems that were established very early. There were numerous different systems. The Quakers was originally a lodge system, and the Goodfellows, and they were organized around rural communities, around farming communities, around manufacturing, and even around artists. There were artist communities as well, and they were mutual benefit societies. And in the days before welfare, in the days before health insurance, this is where you joined one of the lodges, and they were the ones that provided those services that later the government is now providing. And of course, once the government takes over, it screws everything up. So, but in the early days, and even, the Black community and the Mexican community, they had their own lodge systems, their own fellowship societies that supported each other. So for, a monthly fee of what in today's dollars would be maybe $10 a month, $20 a month, they got health insurance, they got unemployment insurance, they got welfare insurance. And if they were, in need, the lodge would take the money that was pooled and support the members of the lodge. And they were so successful that a lot of the early hospitals were built by these fellowship societies. So, a small town would have the fellowship society. They would, get $20 from everybody. And again, in those days, it was a lot on the honor system too. So you didn't have welfare queens just laying around, having 10, 20 kids and getting paid for it, because in those days there was honor. People were embarrassed to go on welfare. Here in Canada,
back in the day, they were embarrassed to even take Social Security.
Oh yeah, they were ashamed. They would.
Yeah, it's like my grandfather, God bless him, he always thought it was just for people that didn't do well in life, and it was just to help them out. But he always thought he did well, and he could take care of himself. He didn't even take a penny of Social Security. Meanwhile, his kids, my parents, and that's part of their generation. It's like, well, wait a second, I'm retired and I'm going to take my Social Security. I paid into that. It's my right.
Yeah.
It's a totally different worldview. The other thing that's a totally different worldview, if people are younger than me, I'm 40 now. People that are younger than me, they're listening to you say, oh, don't go to Starbucks, throw out your TV, don't go to Walmart. This is almost like, what kind of American are you? Or what are you? This is crazy talk. How can we even function? What you're just saying about the lodges, this is a whole different idea that hasn't even, people haven't even thought about this. If they're younger than me, people your generation, you're talking to people that know what this is, but people younger than me, they don't know what this is.
No, my generation doesn't know what this is either. I have no idea about this. This came as a result of me trying to figure out, I'm a little bit arrogant. I have a high IQ, right?
Right.
So I'm looking at society and I'm thinking, come on, you can figure something out. The people that run the world, they're idiots. They're not very clever. They really aren't. They're evil and they're unscrupulous and ruthless, but that doesn't equate to intelligence. Being evil is actually kind of easy. There's nothing to it. All you have to do is lack a conscience and then screw and lie and cheat and rob and steal and whatever you want to do, and then you become a big success. In our current society, that is the key to success. Having a lack of conscience, being willing to be a real piece of, so they're not really intelligent people. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, geez, I'm smart. What did we do in the past? And also because I've read a lot of history, and it was only when I came across reading the history of past groups, like, for example, I am an artist, and I always thought that the idea of and when I was younger, I was part of a hippie commune too, for a while. So I thought of the commune system, but it was only until researching that I found out about the fellowship organizations. Currently, the only one that's still left is the foresters, and of course, nobody's heard of them, right?
Right. Well, there are still moose lodges.
Yeah, but their activities have been pared down to nothing more than like a social club now.
Yeah, like a drinking club or something.
It's a drinking club. That's all it is now. And that's, again, the government stepped in because the government didn't like it that all these, people were organizing themselves, building hospitals, providing health care for their members, They even built fairs, like these associations would buy, 50 acres in Wisconsin and build a public fair and picnic grounds and roller coasters. I mean, all paid for by small communities that they all chipped in $20 a month, because really there's a lot of money in there. Like we chip into the government through taxes, and they squander that money in unbelievable ways. It really doesn't take that much money to feed people. It really doesn't take that much money to house them. It takes a fraction of what the military spending is in this country.
I was going to say, it's all about the military and the Social Security stuff, the entitlements that we call them entitlements now, but the Social Security, the Medicare, Medicaid, and the military. We don't do anything in America but war and make sick people at this point, because that's what's keeping our quote unquote economy alive. Yeah. And then we've got a stock market that people then buy stock in the companies that power this sickness of
it's like playing 3-card Monty on a back alley in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, the stock market police. Oh my God. It's so rigged and so controlled, and it's such a farce. It's like voting. No, the positive thing is that we as people can do these things and we can make a big difference, right? The trouble is, the government has gone after the whole concept of mutual aid societies. They went after them back in the 1900s, and when the Federal Reserve came in and they started the income tax, they really wanted to get rid of these people, and so they destroyed all these, and they won't even teach it in schools. That's why you think, well, I hear about it because I'm an old person. No, I never was taught any of this. This has long been swept under the rug. The concept of people working together to improve their lives. No, no, no. We all have to depend on the government. They will do everything for you. Look, it's actually really encouraging to see what small groups of people can accomplish. But here's the problem. We have had 80 years of an educational system that has dumbed people down, it has divided people along religious, political, racial lines, that has done everything in their power to create an entire population, now 3 generations, because I count the baby boomers as part of the generation of zombie mind-controlled idiots. 3 generations of mindless lunatics that can't think for themselves. And therefore, we can't work together. But if we could, learn those skills again, we could do a lot, and we could undermine the government. Because if the entire population, or at least, say, 50%, didn't need the government for anything, we did our own, we built our own communities, we had our own healthcare systems, even something as simple as a buying group. The Orientals do that. I learned about this when I was living in China, because, here we see every variety store, convenience store in Canada is owned by Koreans. And, and I remember in the States too, most of them are owned by Koreans or, Asians. And I remember hearing during the LA riots after Rodney King, when they were, burning down and looting LA, and then there were the Koreans up on the rooftops with guns shooting them off. And they interviewed some of the blacks, and they were saying, well, how come these Koreans have the money to open up grocery stores and things like that? Well, let me tell you how the Koreans had the money. Because they formed what's called a lending circle. A group of 20 Koreans would get together, and they would all throw in $100 a month into a pot. And they would do that month after month after month. And then what they would do is they would take that money and they would invest it in a business that they would all be a part of. Now, they would put one family in to run it, and these folks worked, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, to run this business. But they got the money because they all pooled together and they invested the money into the business. And one family would run it for 5 years. They would make all their money back plus profit. Then they would bring another family over from Korea and say, we have jobs for you. Yeah, long hours, but in 5 years, you can cash out and buy a house and get another business. That's how they support each other. And look what they've done. They start off with a crappy little convenience store, but after 5 years, they've already cycled, 4 or 5 families through there, started up another 6 businesses. They all own homes. They all have nice cars. They all have kids. They all go to the, the good schools because they cooperated. Only 20 people. And they were able to do all this. But this is kept from us. This is kept away from our awareness. Anyways, I'm
it
into
it almost sounds like a mafia type of situation, like that with the Italian mafia, how they would, they all kind of, granted you'd have to pay into it, and it was kind of, you were intimidated to pay into it, but then they would do things for the community.
Well, yeah,
they did until they started doing crazy things to the community by bringing in the drugs and everything else. But that was the original idea of that they would take care of each other.
Yeah, the mafia started off as, again, another mutual aid society.
Right.
And the same thing with the triads and the tongs. You've heard about the tongs, right? The Chinese organized crime, right? Called the tongs.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, if you've ever read about the Tong Wars of New York in the 1890s. So the tongs is a slang for a Chinese organized crime, but tong actually means mutual aid society. They started off as a mutual aid society 200 years ago. Then they kind of evolved into an anti-government society. And actually, the style of kung fu that I learned and in Hong Kong when I was in Hong Kong is called Hong Chuan, and it is actually based on the triad, the Heaven, Earth, and Man society, the Huang Ti Hui, which was again a mutual aid society, but they kind of evolved into an anti-government society, which actually all mutual aid societies are. They are anti-government because they do not rely on governments, Well, and the governments hate them.
Anytime you have an established, community, however stuff grows up, all of a sudden this community organizes into a government, and then the government, hires, law enforcement. And what happens is, this is what Rachel and I talk about with the shadow citizen, is the people that are above the law. The laws don't apply equally to everybody. And so when you have a local government, it has a tendency to, be lenient on its, founding members or whatever, the people that are more highly placed, and yet they just throw the book at anybody, trying to start out. It's, I saw this all the time with just building contractors. It's the building inspectors they weren't really looking out for the people that needed the service to make sure that the houses were built well. They were just keeping the competition away by that. You mentioned, too, before about the three generations, and those three generations are all the ones that grew up with television, the baby boomers, the millennials.
That's right.
And so, and
X. Let's not
and
forget
X.
X.
And
I'm Gen X. That's totally forgotten every single time. But yes, Gen X. Yeah.
But in the shows like, any of these Survivor Island shows just drive, and I haven't had a TV for a long, long time. Well, I do have one. I just don't have cable. I play DVDs with it every now and then. But all of they're like trying to teach us to be, sociopathic behavior of, of just, teaming up to cut down the guy that's, it seems to have the ability to make it. So, I don't know. I guess I'll be...
Yeah, I have a particular hatred for that Survivor show. I watched it once, and I saw immediately what they were trying to do. Here's... in my book, The Art of Urban Survival, the first chapter is dedicated to psychopaths, and I used the text to narrate the video called Defense Against a Psychopath, because in order to understand why our society is so insane and screwed up as it is, you have to understand what psychopaths are. And they're not just serial killers, and they're not just people that want money, that are addicted to money, and they're not just people that want control. They're all those things. Yes, they're serial killers. Look at the Clintons. They want power. Look at the Rockefellers and the Soros and the McCains. And yes, they want all that. But there's another facet to their personality that people will find very hard to understand. But these people, it's not just that they want to be richer than you. It's not just that they want to control you. Is that they enjoy seeing people suffer. That's their kink. That's what they get off on. That's what arouses them. That's why they rape children, because children are suffering, and their suffering causes them to become aroused. And the people that are in charge of our government are doing things they want the money, they want the power. They already got money and power. They got all the money and all the power that any despot, tyrant, emperor could ever dream of having. They're ruling over 360 million people and controlling everybody's lives through their petty legislation and their armed enforcement wing of military and police. The most Caligula could only dream of such power. But what they're doing is they're causing suffering, and they're doing that on purpose because they enjoy it. So a lot of these things is like, why would they do that? They're hurting their own people. No, they're destroying America. Well, they wouldn't do that just to destroy America. America, is their bread and butter. They wouldn't destroy America. No, they wouldn't destroy America because for them, witnessing our misery and suffering and our slavery is even more pleasurable than making more money. So until you understand that, you don't understand what our foreign policy is, what government policy is, what legislation is. It's all designed to create more misery and suffering because they enjoy it. There's no other reason for it. It's insane.
I
Anyway,
think the other thing that happens too is that you've got these personalities, we'll call them psychopathic personalities, but there's different camps. They form into camps, in my opinion. They're forming into camps, and they are trying to vie for dominance with each other. So that to me is what I see them having fun doing. Not only just, just watching people be miserable and suffering, but they enjoy the fight against another psychopath.
well, yes and no. First of all, psychopaths, there's a kind of a life cycle to all of this, and there's a life cycle to civilization, and our civilization is coming to an end. So again, more reason to form a leaderless society of small communities because it's coming to an end, folks. And if you can get 10, 15, 20, 25 people to work together, you all got each other's backs, you all contribute, a measly $10 a month, $20 a month, after a few months it builds up, and now you've got a kitty, a pot, a cash, so that if somebody gets sick you can pay for their medical expenses, or if they have somebody's giving birth, you can pay for a midwife to come to their house.
Well,
Things
people
like that.
used to have families. That's the other thing that blows my mind too. The families used to be so big, and
Yeah.
families would take care of each other. The other thing too is that your family would be on your back about being healthy, because it was your family that was going to have to pay for medical bills, or it was your family that was going to, like, everybody feel bad because your family wasn't behind you. If what I'm trying to say is we've lost the family. The family is one of the most simple
Yeah,
micro local things to deal with,
Yes.
and we've lost that.
It's your original community.
Yeah.
And they've gone after the family on purpose and they've destroyed the family. Feminism and pornography and they've turned us. They've destroyed everything in this country that is good. They have. We don't have family anymore. I don't have any family.
No.
Never
Yeah,
did.
no.
There's a story I'm going to fit in right here because it does kind of fit, because it struck me. One of the people I pick up every morning, she's had a stroke and several brain surgeries, and as I drive her down the hill, she is screaming, stupid, 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 and she's just going through all these motions and everything. And my dispatcher said, I have a girl that's got to get out to the elementary. She's late. Can you pick her up en route? Because they're both going the same way. So I pick her, I go to pull up, and she's got a little, baby car carrier. And I go, oh my gosh. And she puts the baby car carrier in the back with this other woman who's just this rah, 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 rah. And as soon as she did, all of a sudden that woman, she just mellowed out. Her face was smiling, and she was reaching over, and she didn't want to, she was just so happy to be in the cab with this baby, and I just thought about what, she's not around her family anymore. The county hires care to look after her, and then we pick her up and we take her to adult daycare where she's around other old people that are in the process of just being eliminated. And I just thought, what if this woman was being taken care of by her family like they used to do in the old days? So I just wanted to fit that one in there because it really struck me as I just looked at it and I thought, wow, we've drifted so far.
Oh, yeah. And it's all part of the programming. It's the education system, the TV, the popular culture. It's all designed to destroy the family. And it's succeeded wildly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the thing is, if you don't have a family, then the next best thing is to create your own family and get people that think like you, that have the same values as you, that you can trust. It's essential that you can trust them, and that you have each other's backs, and create your own family. And by doing so, you have your own community, and that will offer some protection against the predation of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the more I'm becoming more and more of an anarchist all the time because, I think in a small community it does have a function, and that's how I grew up too. I remember we used to have the milkman used to walk into the house and look in the refrigerator to see how much milk we needed for the couple of days. Doors were never locked.
Walk right in.
Yeah.
Go to your fridge and say, okay, well, I'm going to bring you another 2 quarts tomorrow. Okay,
just a whole different lifestyle. And like you say, it was like Huck Finn or, Andy of Mayberry. It was just completely different.
Yeah, but it's not like that anymore, guys.
No,
that's
it's not at all.
It's really scary to think about that. Because as soon as you said this about the micro local, I'm thinking, oh, you mean like the people at Waco?
Oh yeah, sure.
That's they had gone away. They created their own family. Granted, it was not anything that I'd want to be involved in. I don't think, from like the messaging that I'm getting about the whole thing, I don't think I want to be involved with that. But they had gone and they started their own little community. Next thing you know, everybody knows the story of Waco.
Sure, they're burning children alive.
Yeah, and we get the story that they cover up, because the winner always writes the history, so they're not going to portray the Koreshes or whoever they were as a good Christian family. They're going to show them as evil, wife swapping and all sorts of stuff. Who knows what goes on in that place? But it was the government that went in and raided it, and well,
whatever they did, they weren't burning their children alive, right?
No,
right. Mm-hmm.
Only the government does that and gets away with it.
I mean, I'm not a Christian, and I would never be part of something like the Branch Davidian or whatever. But look, that's their business.
Yeah,
that is their goddamn business. They can do whatever the hell they want, provided they're not injuring children. If it's consensual among adults. That's their business, what the hell they want to do, who they want to believe, what they want to do. But that's not why the government went after them. They went after them specifically because they were a separate community. And that's why the government went after the Moose Lodge. That's why the government went after the Goodfellows Association and every other mutual aid and fraternal and sisterhood type societies. The government went after them. They took them down first financially. And then when the medical system came through, the Rockefeller medical system came through, they were very instrumental in going after these societies because at this time they were consolidating their control over medicine. And what they didn't like was that these mutual aid societies would use their money to have a doctor on call. So they would pay these doctors a monthly retainer. And anytime somebody got sick, the doctor would pay a house call. I still remember having the doctor come to the house, right?
I do too. I remember that vividly,
You see, I've never experienced that until I went to another country. I was in a different country, and the doctor came right to the place we were staying. And the guy stayed at our room with us while he gave an IV, and he stayed there until the person felt better.
Yeah. And so that's what these mutual aid societies provided, And, the medical establishment couldn't have that because they weren't making any money. Because the societies paid the doctors on an individual basis. They would interview them. The doctor would come in and present his credentials and his references, and they would hire him, And it was profitable for the doctors because they weren't like working out every day. There might be 1,000 people, and one or two would get sick a week, and so he'd take 1 or 2 sick calls. But his expenses were taken care of, and he could work for several different mutual aid societies, And so there was no profit for the medical industrial complex. No profit for the pharmaceutical complex because they all made their own medicines. So that had to go, right?
That's one of the themes from the Power Hour. Who will be our guest coming up here, Joyce Riley? But she says hospitals and doctors make money off of sick people. So what incentive do they have to make you well? And that's very, very true. So.
Well, also just the paperwork that is now bound with, all the administrative stuff that has to happen for you to go see a doctor. It's nuts. It's literally nuts. People, you see it online. You could get a job doing like medical transcription, or you could do like there's little niches that you can do in that industry just to keep the thing afloat. They need hundreds of people. It employs hundreds of people every time somebody gets sick, like with cancer or something. It's a huge industry.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like what you said, the motivation now is to keep people sick. That's where the profit is. But under the other system, the motivation for the fellowship doctors was to keep people healthy, because if they were healthy, less work for them. Right?
Right.
They didn't profit from them being sick. When the members of the community were healthy, the doctor had more free time to go golfing. So it was in his best interest to make sure his patients were healthy.
It's really amazing that more corporations haven't kind of adopted that, just because they're always, complaining about their workers being off sick and, having to pay sick days and all that kind of stuff, you'd think. But I guess that's just, one corporation kind of interfering with another one, so they have, secrets and deals.
The government comes in with legislation and things like that to make sure it's illegal to do anything positive.
Yeah, that's
the
probably true.
The government is out to kill you. That's, let's not fool around anymore. The government has never cared about the average person. Never in the history of humanity has any government ever cared about the average person. So that's why it's essential to always limit the power of government.
Okay, well, wait a second. That statement, I'm in my heart, I'm with you, but I can tell people in our audience are like, wait a second, what about the Kennedy era? They loved us.
No, they didn't. Come on.
What about Obama? He loved us. People be like that. It's like people, they don't. I get frustrated because people really do feel like they got a president or elected official that they voted for, they believed in, and they really think that that's the way that things get better, is to get somebody in power that will make things better. And it's like they wash their hands of it.
Yeah, I always hear, well, who's going to build the roads? Who's going to build the schools and educate the children? And I go down to the Historical Society, and this city has 500-foot bluffs, and the people back in the day before power tools built a huge toboggan run from the top of the bluffs to across the lake. Tell me an insurance company would let them do that now. It's just ridiculous. You see pictures of rows of men with shovels, and I know it was a hard life, but the stuff got done. And that was before a overly organized government with hundreds and hundreds of black and white SUVs to go around and revenue generate is all I can see, really. So,
well, the communities built the roads. Communities built everything before government came in, and they did it for cost. In other words, if it costs, $1,000 a mile, the community would pay, the $1,000 a mile. They would collect the money. They would donate the materials. They would volunteer their time. Now that the government comes in, the highway still costs $1,000 a mile, but they're charging $2 million a mile
because you've got unions now. You've got a bond that you've got
the kickback and the corruption, because the government's going to hire their contractor, and the contractor is going to say, it costs $100,000 a mile.
Right, and you got insurance, and you got everything else going on. There's all sorts of stuff hanging off of it.
Everybody's got to get their kickback, and everybody's get the money under the table. And so now the people, the community is still paying for the roads. I mean, we could have paid it, but through a mutual aid society or through a community, $1,000 a mile. We're still paying for it, but we're paying $100,000 a mile, and the other $999,000 is going into corruption to pay for sex parties with underage teenage girls for these. Anyways.
No, go on. That's what we're here.
No, I start swearing.
Go right ahead. I know.
My feet, because when I think about the exploitation and the kind of people that are in charge of things, I mean, just the worst scum of humanity, and they're the ones that are ruling it. They're the ones that are ruling us. They own everything, and and they use their money to create more misery and suffering, and it's just so infuriating when you know what the truth of our society is. It's just horrendous.
I almost think that that's what the whole pedophilia thing is. They just think of the most horrendous, awful crime they can come up with, and that's how they keep everybody intact. Everybody is hush-hush because they're in on it. And so...
they're in on it. Yeah.
And so, yeah, they've got the seat at the table, but and they can portray, this lovely, charismatic character who gets reelected every 4 years or however, and yet, these, I think they are.
Wait. Wait. I was just at the State House recently, and I'll just tell you, the people at the State House, granted it's Rhode Island, we're the littlest state in the union, I'll just tell you, it was basically like you're walking around a high school. And I wouldn't put any of those people in that like omni-evil mindset that you guys are talking about right now. But I could see people in that high school like getting the idea like, oh, I could go maybe higher in this hierarchy and this pyramid if I act a certain way. And then they'd kind of morph and they'd go up. But I would say the local governments, at least the one that I witnessed and have witnessed it previously, it's much more like a high school. And to that effect is like, oh my gosh, these are the people that are actually running the world here for me in my state. Wow. Okay. But bringing it back down to this local level, going to that micro local, that's where you can really affect stuff. And then if you do want to engage with politics, you could probably, with your little micro local group, now 12, 10 people, 13 people, 20 people showing up at the State House and presenting something within the language that they speak there, this legal language, that might actually work. But no, I don't think that you can go full on like, oh, everybody in government's like a pedophile.
No, not everybody. No. I know people in local government too. We're almost running out of time, and they're fine, but they don't have any power.
Yes, exactly. They don't have power. It's the people that play that want to play.
Where they did have power, if they wanted to move up in the hierarchy, well, there's people looking for them. They're checking if they're downloading child porn, and if they are, then somebody will make them an offer.
Yeah, if they've got something that they can like basically blackmail them on in the future. That's what I've seen happening. People that
don't have to blackmail them because, look, these psychopaths work together, right? Like I said earlier, there's sort of a cycle with them. It's when two con artists used to move into a small Midwestern farm town to fleece the locals, right? They cooperated, right? They recognize each other immediately. They know they're con artists. So
they have like little radar beams on each other. Beep, 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 beep.
They do. Yeah. It's like gaydar, It's like gaydar, right?
Well, you mentioned before about the local lodges, and of course the one that didn't get mentioned was the Masons, and of course they all say that this is where all the evil was, but the same way as your local government, most of these guys aren't bad. They're just the guys that want to get out of the house once a week to go tell stories and have beer with the guys. But the
Lions, the Rotarians, the Masons, the Shriners. I mean, on the civilian level, they're just regular guys, small businessmen, and they do a lot of good too. I don't have anything against those people,
But there is buried in those lodges is the infrastructure that this, that the evil can branch out through, and it has a covers, and that's whether it's at the local, local government or local schools, there's probably a few bad apples that have managed to just get in and, I don't know, they work the system without corrupting everybody, but a lot of people kind of go along with it and don't say anything. I don't know whether because instructors are tenured or, whatever, they have different ways to protect each other once they're in the club, and they aren't all evil, but there probably are some evil doers in with them. So anyway, we're out of time. It's we've got less than a minute left here, and Stefan, thank you so much. Do you have a website to plug? Or?
China Strategies. Tell people about China Strategies and how to buy your books and know about you.
Okay, so my website is chinastrategies.com. That's one word, China Strategies. And my most recent book is The Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior. And the book is aimed at providing people this, because we're going through some really tough times and it's going to get tougher. And we need to overcome our fear in our inactivity. And the only way to do that is to sort of like, we've got to tap into being the kind of people the founding fathers were, tough, independent, strong warriors. And so it's a book on how to become a Jedi Knight, basically.
Thank you,
Right
Stephen.
on. And that's what we all need.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a bunch. We'll get you back another time, I hope.
Thanks for having fun, guys.
Welcome to Shadow Citizen with Rachael McIntosh and Rob Ossell.